The story begins with a subtle, almost ordinary moment that will set the tone for the slow-burn romance. The male narrator, a young man in his mid-20s, is introduced in a familiar environment, perhaps a quiet cafe, a bookstore, or a cozy co-working space. The opening should immediately establish his introspective nature. He notices small details in the world around him, from the faint scent of coffee beans to the rustle of pages in a book, reflecting his emotional sensitivity. The older woman enters the scene with understated elegance. She is confident, yet carries a quiet vulnerability, suggesting life experience without overt exposition. Her presence is magnetic, not because of flamboyance, but through subtle sensory cues, the soft sway of her hair, the faint perfume lingering in the air, the deliberate calm in her movements. These sensory details help the audience feel the scene, rather than simply witness it. The first interaction should be brief, but charged with unspoken emotion. Perhaps they reach for the same book on a shelf, or their hands brush as they order coffee. The key is to describe the moment through physical and emotional sensation. The warmth of her hand against his, the slight pause in her gaze that lingers just a beat too long, and the rush of awareness he feels in that instant. Avoid overt romantic gestures. Instead, focus on subtle touches and lingering glances that convey curiosity, respect, and a hint of desire. Internal monologue is crucial here. Through his perspective, show his hesitation, the internal conflict between social norms and instinctive attraction, and his awareness of the age difference without judgment. For example, he might notice the maturity in her voice, the calm confidence in her posture, and feel both admiration and nervousness. Similarly, she may sense his attentiveness, the quiet thoughtfulness in his eyes, and feel a rare intrigue stirring within her. Emotionally, the scene should oscillate between connection and restraint. They may exchange a few polite words, small smiles, or subtle humor. Anything that allows a bond to begin forming without rushing it. Show the audience that this is the first spark, the gentle flutter of curiosity and intrigue that will grow over time. Sensory-rich details anchor the scene in realism. Describe the texture of her scarf as it brushes past him, the way sunlight falls across her face, the faint sound of her laughter carrying through the air. Each observation should reinforce both the physical presence and the emotional impact she has on him. Finally, close this keynote with a lingering sense of anticipation. Perhaps they part ways with a shared, quiet look, leaving the male narrator both captivated and introspective. The audience should feel that something meaningful has begun, setting the stage for a slow, emotionally nuanced journey toward intimacy and connection. This first encounter establishes the emotional foundation, hints at the forbidden attraction, and primes viewers for a story that will build naturally and deeply. In the second part of the story, the relationship begins to deepen through small, meaningful interactions rather than dramatic events. The male narrator, still captivated by the older woman from their first encounter, notices her in another context, a quiet library corner, a shared workplace, or a community event. The setting should feel intimate but natural, a space where their paths might realistically cross again. Here, the emotional focus is on observation and subtle connection. The male narrator studies her movements, the way she tucks a loose strand of hair behind her ear, the gentle tilt of her head as she listens, or the soft cadence of her voice when she speaks. Every small gesture becomes a sensory imprint, allowing the audience to feel the magnetic pull between them. Her presence is both comforting and exhilarating, a mix of warmth and restrained desire. The dialogue in this part is minimal but meaningful. Perhaps they exchange a few words about a shared interest, a book, a song, a work-related topic, but the key is what remains unsaid. Their silences are as charged as their words. The male narrator feels a growing internal tension, an awareness of her subtle glances, and the way she leans slightly closer when they speak. Describe these moments in sensory terms. The faint scent of her perfume brushing past him, the warmth radiating from her shoulder as she reaches for something nearby, the soft rustle of her clothing as she shifts position. These small details communicate intimacy without overt action. Emotionally, this part should explore hesitation, curiosity, and the thrill of the unknown. The male narrator reflects on the age difference, societal expectations, and his own hesitations, but also feels a quiet courage growing within him. She, in turn, senses his attentiveness and sincerity, perhaps even a hint of admiration, which sparks a gentle intrigue. Their connection is mutual but understated, emphasizing respect and emotional depth rather than physical pursuit. A pivotal moment in this scene could be a fleeting touch, a hand brushing against his as they both reach for the same pen, a light hand on his arm to point something out, or a gentle pat on the shoulder. Focus on how these touches feel, electric but comforting, brief but lingering in memory. The male narrator might notice the subtle heat of her skin, the softness of her gesture, and the emotional resonance it leaves behind. Close the keynote with an internal reflection from the narrator. He feels both exhilarated and conflicted, aware that this is more than chance, yet unsure how it will unfold. The scene should leave viewers with a sense of anticipation, the quiet thrill of a slow-burning connection beginning to ignite. The emotional arc now moves from intrigue to cautious curiosity, planting the seeds for deeper emotional intimacy and subtle romantic tension in the upcoming parts. By the third part of the story, the relationship begins to deepen meaningfully. The male narrator and the older woman have crossed paths multiple times, and a sense of familiarity and trust is beginning to form. The key focus here is emotional intimacy through vulnerability rather than physical romance. This is the stage where the audience begins to sense that their connection is growing beyond curiosity and subtle attraction. It's becoming personal, human, and heartfelt. The scene could take place in a slightly more private, quiet setting, perhaps a walk in a park as the sun is setting, a small cafe corner with soft ambient light, or a casual work environment after hours. The narrator notices nuances about her that he hadn't before. The way her eyes soften when she talks about her past, a brief falter in her posture when she recalls a difficult memory, or the faint tension in her hands when she discusses something meaningful. These small details make the character feel real and relatable while heightening the audience's emotional engagement. The pivotal moment in this part is the first glimpse of vulnerability from the older woman. She might share a personal story, reveal a quiet fear, or admit to a small regret. The male narrator's role is to witness this with empathy and gentle attentiveness, reinforcing the emotional bond without judgment. Describe his reactions through sensory and emotional cues, the way his chest tightens with concern, the warmth he feels in a protective instinct, or the subtle steadying of her hand in his as a gesture of reassurance. The focus should be on shared emotional resonance, not physical romance. Dialogue should remain understated but meaningful. For instance, she might speak softly, with pauses that allow the weight of her words to sink in. He responds with quiet affirmation, nods, small smiles, or a comforting hand lightly brushing hers. These gestures convey trust, care, and attentiveness, deepening the intimacy without rushing into overt romantic action. The male narrator's internal monologue is crucial here. He reflects on the complexity of her life experience compared to his own youth, feeling both admiration and a quiet longing. He notices how her voice carries a mix of strength and fragility, and how her presence seems to anchor him even as he senses the delicate balance of their budding connection. Likewise, she senses his sincerity, his ability to listen without judgment, and this quietly fascinates her. End the keynote with a lingering emotional tension, a gentle, unspoken acknowledgement that something meaningful is forming. Perhaps he watches her leave, feeling a subtle ache in her absence, or she glances back with a fleeting, tender smile. The audience should feel the deepening connection, the slow but steady build of trust and affection, and the quiet anticipation of what might come next. This part sets the foundation for emotional closeness as a precursor to romantic tension, preparing the audience for subtle flirtation, shared experiences, and hints of desire in Part 4. without breaking the story's slow burn rhythm. By part 4, the story's emotional intimacy has been established, and now subtle romantic tension begins to emerge. The male narrator and the older woman have shared small moments of connection and vulnerability, and the audience should feel a quiet anticipation that something more is possible. This section focuses on the first sparks of romantic awareness, expressed through gestures, proximity, and unspoken emotion rather than words or overt actions. The scene could unfold in a softly lit environment that encourages closeness, a quiet evening at a local art gallery, a walk in the park under golden sunlight, or a cozy cafe with warm ambient light. The setting should evoke calm intimacy, allowing characters to linger naturally and for small details to resonate. For example, the narrator notices the way her hair catches the sunlight, the gentle curve of her smile when she laughs, or the way her hand briefly hovers near his as they walk side by side. These sensory cues deepen the audience's emotional engagement and signal a growing attraction. Physical gestures are minimal but meaningful. Perhaps she lightly touches his shoulder to get his attention, or he instinctively offers a steadying hand when she stumbles on uneven pavement. Focus on how these touches feel: the warmth of her skin, the subtle pressure of her hand against his, or the fluttering awareness in his chest when their eyes meet. These moments should carry emotional resonance, hinting at attraction without crossing into sexual territory. Dialogue should remain understated and natural, often playful or teasing, reflecting growing comfort and curiosity. A shared laugh or a moment of mutual understanding can convey romantic chemistry just as powerfully as words of affection. Their silences are equally important. Lingering glances, shared breaths, and the unspoken acknowledgement of feelings beginning to surface. Emotionally, this part explores the thrill and hesitation of budding desire. The male narrator notices his heart quickening when she is near, the way his thoughts drift to her after they part, and the gentle conflict between excitement and restraint. She, in turn, may feel a quiet fascination with his attentiveness, his warmth, and the emotional honesty he brings into their interactions. This push-pull of desire and restraint builds subtle tension, keeping viewers invested in the slow-burn romance. Sensory-rich details anchor the narrative in realism. The faint scent of her perfume, the rustle of her clothes as she leans closer to examine something, or the warmth radiating from her hand as they share a brief touch. Each observation strengthens the audience's emotional connection to the characters and reinforces the intimacy of these small yet significant moments. End the keynote with a quiet, lingering moment that leaves both characters and viewers aware of something unspoken. Perhaps their hands brush and neither immediately pulls away, or they exchange a look that communicates curiosity, attraction, and a desire to know each other more deeply. This moment solidifies the romantic spark and sets the stage for deeper emotional and physical closeness in the coming parts, keeping the story compelling, tender, and YouTube safe. By part 5, the story reaches a point where the emotional intimacy between the male narrator and the older woman is tested. Their connection has grown steadily through shared moments, small gestures, and subtle attraction, but now a quiet conflict or tension arises. This conflict is not dramatic or sensationalized. It is deeply human, reflective of their age difference, social expectations, or internal insecurities. The goal is to heighten emotional stakes while maintaining the slow burn, YouTube-safe tone. The scene might take place in a setting that contrasts intimacy with distance. A late evening walk where shadows stretch long, a quiet cafe where seats are side by side, but separated by a table, or a workplace where professional boundaries loom. The physical environment mirrors the emotional tension. There is warmth and proximity, but an invisible barrier keeps them from fully closing the gap. The conflict should be internal and subtle, primarily through the male narrator's perception of her hesitations or reservations. Perhaps she seems distracted, pauses before responding, or chooses her words carefully. He notices the slight tightening of her shoulders, the brief downward glance, or the faint quiver in her voice when discussing something personal. Describe these cues in sensory-rich terms. The tension in her hands, the way her perfume lingers as she moves away, or the quiet pull in his chest when he senses her emotional distance. These observations help the audience feel the undercurrent of tension. Dialogue remains understated but carries weight. Their conversation may brush on sensitive topics like past relationships, personal boundaries, or doubts about societal judgment regarding their age difference. The key is emotional honesty without confrontation. Each word reveals vulnerability, hesitation, and the desire to connect despite uncertainty. For example, she might admit her fear of being misunderstood, while he struggles to reconcile his attraction with his respect for her experience. Physical gestures are minimal but meaningful. A hesitant touch, a brief hand on her shoulder, a lingering brush of fingers, or a comforting hand over hers serves to bridge the emotional gap without breaking the story's delicate, slow-burn tone. Describe how these touches feel: grounding, reassuring, and charged with unspoken longing. Internally, the male narrator experiences a mix of admiration, empathy, and frustration. He recognizes her vulnerabilities, feels protective, yet is unsure how to navigate the delicate boundaries. Similarly, she senses his sincerity but wrestles with her own fears and self-imposed constraints. Their emotions pull in opposite directions, creating tension that feels real, relatable, and compelling for viewers. Close this keynote with a moment of reflection or unresolved emotion. Perhaps they part with a quiet, lingering glance, a soft sigh, or a subtle brush of hands, leaving both with the bittersweet ache of longing and uncertainty. The audience should feel the emotional stakes rising, aware that the slow-burn connection is deepening but will face challenges before reaching resolution. This part is essential for building dramatic tension and emotional depth, preparing the story for Part 6, where reconciliation, understanding, and renewed intimacy begin to unfold, keeping viewers invested in the character's journey. By Part 6, the story reaches its emotional crescendo. After the quiet conflict of Part 5, the male narrator and the older woman are poised at a moment of reconnection and deepened intimacy. This section focuses on resolution, emotional honesty, and the subtle, YouTube-safe physical gestures that solidify trust and affection. It's the stage where the slow burn begins to blossom into a tender, meaningful closeness. The scene should take place in a setting that encourages vulnerability and warmth. A cozy, softly lit apartment, a quiet evening stroll beneath street lamps, or a secluded corner in a cafe where conversation flows freely. The environment reflects the emotional shift, a space where distance fades and the characters can truly meet each other heart to heart. Sensory details are crucial. The gentle hum of ambient noise, the warmth of shared proximity, or the delicate scent of her perfume mingling with the evening air. These elements anchor the audience in the intimacy of the moment. The emotional focus here is honest communication and mutual reassurance. The female character opens up about her fears, insecurities, or past regrets, and the male narrator responds with empathy, patience, and quiet affirmation. Dialogue should feel natural and reflective, revealing their growing understanding and emotional alignment. For example, she might admit she feared judgment or doubted her own desirability, while he reassures her with sincerity, emphasizing his admiration, respect, and the genuine connection they share. Physical gestures in this part are deliberate and meaningful, yet remain non-sexual. A hand resting lightly on hers, a brief hug that lingers just long enough to convey care, or a gentle touch on her back as they walk side by side. Describe how these touches feel: grounding, warm, and emotionally resonant. Highlight the small but potent reactions: her shoulder relaxing against his chest warming with a sense of closeness, or their fingers brushing almost unconsciously. These moments convey intimacy without overt romance, keeping the story YouTube safe while emotionally powerful. Internally, the male narrator experiences relief, joy, and a deeper attachment. He notices the subtle signs of her comfort, softening eyes, relaxed posture, and the ease in her voice. He realizes that their connection is not only emotional, but transformative, affecting the way he views vulnerability, trust, and love. Likewise, she senses his patience and steadiness, and this inspires a quiet courage, allowing her to let down emotional walls she has carried for years. Close the keynote with a symbolic moment of emotional alignment. Perhaps they share a long, lingering look, a shared smile that conveys understanding, or a quiet touch that leaves both hearts quietly racing. This turning point sets the stage for the story's conclusion, where emotional intimacy and romantic trust are fully realized, giving the audience a warm, satisfying sense of connection and anticipation for the final resolution. Part 6 is essential because it transforms tension into mutual understanding and closeness, making the concluding part feel earned and deeply rewarding. In the final part of the story, the emotional journey reaches its fulfillment. After the slow build of curiosity, subtle attraction, vulnerability, and quiet conflict, the male narrator and the older woman are ready to embrace the connection they have nurtured. The focus here is on emotional completeness, mutual respect, and tender intimacy that leaves the audience feeling satisfied and uplifted. The setting should be intimate yet natural, reflecting comfort and a sense of home or shared space. It could be a serene evening on a quiet balcony, a softly lit living room with warm ambient lighting, or a calm outdoor setting where the natural world mirrors the tranquility of the moment. Use sensory-rich details to immerse viewers. The scent of rain or evening air, the warmth of a soft blanket between them, the quiet hum of distant city sounds, or the gentle rustle of leaves in a breeze. These subtle cues enhance the emotional weight of the scene. The emotional tone emphasizes mutual acknowledgement and acceptance. Both characters recognize the depth of their connection and the ways they have affected each other's lives. The older woman expresses gratitude for his patience, sincerity, and attentiveness, while the male narrator reflects on how her wisdom, calm presence, and vulnerability have reshaped his understanding of love and intimacy. Dialogue should be heartfelt but understated, capturing the essence of emotional honesty without melodrama. For instance, a simple line like, "I feel like I've known you longer than I have," can carry profound emotional resonance when delivered with sincerity and paired with meaningful body language. Physical gestures are tender and deliberate, emphasizing affection rather than romance. A lingering handhold, a hug where her head rests lightly against his chest, or a gentle touch to brush hair from her face can convey warmth, safety, and closeness. Describe how these touches feel. The steady beat of her heart against his, the comforting weight of her hand in his, or the quiet exhilaration of simply being near someone who understands you. These moments communicate deep intimacy without crossing into sexual content, keeping the story YouTube-friendly. Internally, the male narrator experiences a profound sense of connection and peace. He notices her relaxed posture, her soft laughter, and the light in her eyes, subtle signs that she, too, is embracing this newfound closeness. Likewise, she feels a rare sense of trust and freedom, allowing herself to be fully present in the relationship without fear or hesitation. The audience should feel this emotional equilibrium as a natural culmination of the story's slow burn arc. The closing moment should be symbolic and emotionally satisfying. Perhaps they share a quiet smile while looking at the sunset, walk hand in hand down a familiar street, or simply sit close in comfortable silence, content in each other's presence. This final scene underscores the themes of respect, emotional depth, and enduring connection, providing closure to the story. Part 7 ensures the audience leaves with a warm, fulfilled feeling, having witnessed a gradual, realistic, and emotionally rich romance that honors both characters' experiences and the slow burn journey they shared.